Oh, it's
Oh,
yeah. Go ahead and hit live, Doug. We're already live.
we are already. I'm duped again. Hello,
Yeah.
everyone.
We, for those of you just tuning in, we love to do this to each other, and we have this button at the top for go live, and if we can catch someone off guard, it's silly, it's juvenile, but
But
it's
we're silly
Friday.
and juvenile. So, hello, everyone. Welcome to a special November Q&A session.
Yeah,
What we normally call office hours, but I think we are just calling Q&A. Question time. Come and hang out with
yeah.
Hank and Doug, and we're gonna ramble about writing. Um, but yeah, whatever you
So
want to
let me
call it, we're here.
let me ask you this, Doug. You went on vacation last
Hmm.
week. Vacation. You were representing your family. You had family obligations. Your brother got
Yeah,
married, and you had to hold it down and be a
I
good
was the best
Lansboro.
man.
The best man? But anyway,
I'm
um,
that's what they said. I didn't give myself that title.
did you get any writing done last week?
I did. I stuck to no 0 days, which
Okay.
if you're in the Storycraft Cafe and looking at the 60-day challenge community, you
Yeah.
see that is something that people keep talking about is how they're so happy they're sticking to no 0 days. So, I
Right.
had to do that. But I think there was one day when I hit my goal of 1,600 words. I think I exceeded it a little bit. There was another day when I got 1,200 words, and then the other days were like 400, 30,
Yeah.
100, something like that. It was tough. It was really tough. And I think like it's unfortunate in that this happened during the 60-day challenge, during NaNoWriMo, during this time when we're trying to get so many words in. But it kind of goes to, and I want to say hi to everyone in just a sec, but since we're talking about this, it goes to this idea that in this stage of most writers' lives, where writing is not my full-time income, um, life doesn't revolve around writing, right?
Yeah.
Writing revolves around life. So, yeah, I wanted to write more, but I was on vacation. I think it was only the second week of vacation I've taken this year, minus a couple days here and there. I was at my brother's wedding. I've never been to an all-inclusive resort before. It wasn't snowing. It snowed a little bit one day when I was gone here in Canada. So like I just, live. I wanted to live a little bit.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's important for people.
I 100%. I fully agree with that. With NaNoWriMo being in November, I've often wondered, hi NJ. Hi everyone that Ruth,
Yeah, please. Yeah, let's
Destiny.
say hi to everyone.
Yeah, sorry, I just glanced over and I saw all these hellos and I felt obligated to stop and say hello back. Um,
Hello, everybody.
yeah. You know, November's a crazy month, and then we added some business travel to this month, going to Author Nation,
Hmm.
um, and which complicated things. We've got Thanksgiving in the U.S. Here in a couple of weeks. That complicates things, and
Hmm.
I have a big family, and family coming and going complicates things. I have a birthday this month. That complicates things.
Not your
So
birthday, is it?
yeah, Sunday.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
Sunday's my
happy
birthday.
birthday.
Anyway,
Happy
yeah,
34th birthday.
yeah, yeah, thanks for that. Yeah,
uh, yeah,
anyway, what
busy.
was I say? Oh, yeah, it
Flattered you too much.
I think, one yeah, something that people wrestle with is, what if I get off track? What if, one of these amazing things that happens in November causes me to miss a couple? Okay, if we miss one day, if our typical goal is 1,667 words, if I miss one day, I think what you could probably tack on, 100, uh, I think, what is it, like
Almost
50 extra
just shy of
words
200
if you only
words.
miss
Yeah.
one day? Anyway,
Yeah.
it's not terrible if you miss one day. But if you miss 2 days, if you miss 3 days, they kind of start to stack up, and it's very easy to just feel like you've lost your momentum, and what do you do? So, you knew you had this trip coming up. It was not a surprise, and you normally don't write on weekends, anyway. I'm sorry, my mic boom is trying to come out of its, holder here, so I'm talking and wrestling with this at the same time. Um, how do you prepare ahead of time for the fact that you're going to miss some days? Is that like you knew this trip was coming up? So did you prepare ahead of time?
Yeah, I prepared as much as I think I could have. So realistically, I guess I could have done better in saying, hey, maybe at 8 o'clock at night, I would get in an extra half hour of writing in the days leading up to when I
Right.
left. Or I could have, said let everyone, not everyone, but everyone close to me on the trip know, hey, maybe for half an hour, just don't bug me. Don't ask me if I want to go to the beach or whatever. But again, that didn't jive with what I wanted to do on vacation.
Right.
So I wrote more than my daily goals leading up to it. And the writing sprints that we've been having every day helped. And like you said, I don't normally write on weekends, but I did write on the weekend leading up to the trip, and I will be writing this weekend and the next weekend and the weekend after. But it was really just that plus having a plan for afterwards, being optimistic about, hey, I'm going to try and keep up with it, but odds are I'm not going to. So what am I going to do when I come back? And
Right.
so if this trip never happened, or if someone never missed 4 days of hitting their goal, then you could say, okay, I'm only going to write during our daily writing sprints, and that will help me reach my quota. But now that's not the case. I won't be able to get them all in if I just stick to Monday to Friday writing sprints. So I'm dedicating an hour in the morning to writing as well. And I'll do that as much as I can to hit those. And the further I exceed a daily goal, the smaller the following daily goals become. So if I can start pulling it back in, right now it's at 21 something to hit 50,000 words. If I can write 2,300, 2,500, then I can get that back under 2,000, and then
Yeah.
that becomes more manageable, and then maybe I can ease off on the morning writing sessions as well as the afternoon ones.
One thing that's helped me, and I credit the time that we've put in over the last few months of our writing sprint Wednesdays, which normally when Nano Month is not happening, we have a writing sprint every Wednesday uh,
Mhm.
at standard podcast time, which is 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central. Um, and uh, and we have 40 minutes to an hour of writing sprints every Wednesday. And the little friendly competition, not really a competition that you and I have, where we try to spur each other on to get
Mhm.
more words, really has helped me to get into the mindset of getting the words flowing pretty quickly. And what I found this month is that I'll have my writing session in the morning, and then most of the time I'll show up for the writing sprint, whether I'm hosting it or just cheering everybody on in the chat or whatever. But I try to jump in on those almost every day. And what I found is once the words start flowing, that if I've already met my writing goal for the day, I just let them stack up.
Yeah.
And because if the words are flowing and I don't have a hard cutoff and I already have my plan worked out for the book, I know what I need to write. I just kind of let those words stack up, and that helps me if I have a weekend and early week like I did this past week where my writing schedule was really chaotic. I had some banked up, and I still got some writing in every day, but it was nothing like I'm used to getting. But I had those banked up, and it really helped. And so one piece of it, I don't know that I'd say advice, but just from my observation, if the words are flowing, don't cut them off. If you've got it, if you've
Mhm.
got the time, and bank those words up, because it'll come in handy, because there inevitably will be something that gets in your way one of your writing days. It
Mhm.
always happens.
Yeah.
So if you can get extra words, get them in, bank them up.
I want to touch on a couple things in the chat here, but just to add
Yeah,
on to what you said there, one of the things we talked about in our kickoff workshop on November 1st was inspired moments and grabbing those 5 to 10 minutes of
yeah,
time throughout the
right.
month. So even if you hit your daily word goal, let's say you're sitting in line waiting to, I always go with pick up your kid from school. Because in my mind, I don't have a kid, so I don't actually experience this. But like in a movie, I'm envisioning, the long line of parents and people just bored out of their mind. Whip out your phone
It
and jot
happens.
down 50 words or something.
Yeah,
You do that 5 times a week. That's an extra 250 words. It's an extra 1,000 words over the course of the month. That's half a day of
right.
extra, right?
And
Those small things add up too.
And even if it's not good prose, one thing that I found that helps me is when I have a what I think is a brilliant idea, an idea that just comes out of nowhere. Like, oh goodness, I don't want to forget this. Open up your work in progress. Go to where you think that'll fit in. Put some curly braces there, and just type out some instructions to yourself that give yourself some clue as to what you're thinking, so that when
Mhm.
you get back to your keyboard, if you're not if you don't have thumbs of steel, and are not a great phone typer, leave yourself some clues as to what you're thinking, so that when you get back to the computer and you're in a comfortable spot, you don't forget those ideas, and then you can take those notes you left yourself and really flesh them out. And um, so that the inspired moments are more than just finding a place to write 1,000 words. Make it, record those useful thoughts so that you don't
Mhm.
forget them. And that's been very helpful to me, to leave
I like
myself
that.
little notes in context, in contextual places, so that I understand what I was thinking.
So in the chat here, Kara pointed out, your brother's wedding is a pretty big thing though. And yes, yeah, and like
Yeah.
that was so the day of the wedding was one of the like 50-day or 50-word days. And the day
Mm,
after the wedding was a 50-word day as well. But and that's the thing, if there's something important for everyone in the States, there's Thanksgiving coming up, like you pointed out. You know that's coming up, so you can
yeah.
plan ahead and you can say, hey, maybe on this day when I have a million family members over or I'm at someone's house and celebrating with my family, don't feel like you need to get all of those words in. Rather, stick to that no zero day
Right.
rule. And I want to also point out where was Valentine's? So Valentine's son was suddenly sick a few days ago, and she
I'm
thought she was going
sorry.
to lose her momentum. I hope he's feeling better, first of all.
Yeah.
But I want to point out that Valentine managed to stay on track and thought it was because of the no zero days thing. And it was like, no, no, I promised Doug I have to find some time to write today. Which makes me feel good. I'm glad that's the case. And again, I see in the community so many people talking about no zero days and how that just keeps, because it's always forward progress. You're always moving towards that goal even if you don't hit your daily goal. Right? And
Yep.
that's most important. I
Absolutely.
also saw in the community, and I don't want to get into too granular of details with it, but someone had a pretty devastating event happen. And if it happened to me, I probably wouldn't be participating in this challenge for the rest of the month. But they actually latched on to no zero days as sort of like their anchor and like a connection to a family member, and have put in 30 days, 100 or 30 words, 100 words every day just to help themselves out.
Amazing.
So yeah, it's been fantastic. Uh,
Congratulations.
mhm. So, okay. So this is a Q&A session.
Yeah.
I mean, chat away in the chat, but if you have questions, please drop them in the chat. That's what we're here for. And I
Yeah.
did highlight a question here from NJ. Um, when you lose momentum or inspiration, how do you get it back? Hank.
Hmm. When you lose inspiration or momentum, for me, and this is where becoming a planner really has been a benefit, is that I understand what I need to write scene by scene for my book. So if hit a spot where I don't like what's going on, or I don't feel particularly inspired, I can look forward and see if there is a scene that does inspire me, or that I'm excited to write. Because when I started planning this book, I was excited about a lot. There were a lot of things I really wanted to explore. There were things about this story that I just couldn't wait to get out there.
Mhm,
And it's easy when that initial kind of burning desire dies down. The puppy love of a book that happens in the beginning. Eventually you get kind
mhm,
of worn out at it. But there were plenty of things about the story that did excite me. So I'll go through and look at my plot grid and find a spot that kind of reignites that love of the story again. Maybe I was really excited to get to this, conflict point, and I really want to explore. So I may skip ahead to that scene, write a little bit of it, and then a lot of times what that'll do is open up ideas for um, things that I could really go into more detail or flesh out earlier in the book that will set this up better. Maybe it leads to new ideas for how this could set up better, some new bridges, as our friend Josh talks about, that will open up and things like that. For me, it's skip ahead, find something that does excite you, and a lot of times that will help you to get excited about the previous work again, because you'll begin to see the benefit of the scene that you were not excited about does matter, because it all leads to this point. So maybe you just need to see the point again that you're leading to, that will then get you excited about the previous thing that will lead up to it. I know that's way convoluted, but I think everybody understands what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I agree. I've said this a couple times now, but I've skipped a lot in my first draft of my
Yeah.
outside of this challenge book, right? Like my current book. And that's helped a whole lot. Get to some, especially with something like this, when you're trying to write so much in such a short period of time, if you find yourself burning out or being uninspired, you really need to either get really good at pushing through that, which
Yeah.
is such a reductive thing to say because that's so hard to do,
Yeah.
or you go and find something that you're excited to write. And we put in a lot of work in the 60-day challenge to get that outline set up so that you can even identify where in your book you are excited to write. Now, if you didn't
Right.
do that prep work or you just joined us for Nano, and you didn't have the chance to do that with us, you probably have an idea in your head of some really cool scenes. So just jump ahead to those ones.
Yeah.
Or write a scene that might not make it into the book but is just fun, right? There's the,
Right.
into ninja showed up, or pirates, or dragons, or whatever, or a piano fell out of the window above. What happened? Like that kind of stuff. Just have fun with it, because it is a challenge and we're trying to write a cohesive book, but like it's supposed to be fun.
Right.
We're supposed to be having fun here. And to that point, I want to emphasize something that Josh said yesterday in our show when we asked, what if I'm behind? What's the first tip that comes to mind? And if you've lost momentum or inspiration and you do start to fall behind, Josh said, just don't worry about the 50,000 words then. Don't set a different goal. There might come a time where you've lost so much momentum that the daily writing goals are impossible to meet, or they are so grand or so unrealistic that they just sap your excitement for this challenge. Change your goal. 30,000 words
Yeah.
in a month is still an awesome thing to reach, and then you can hit the next 20,000 in December. Right? That
Right.
is still a huge accomplishment, and you get to maintain your momentum. I keep going back to no 0 days, and I don't want to say it every time I open my mouth, but like I would even rather people have no 0 days for the rest of forever
Right.
than to write 50,000 words this month, right?
Yeah.
And no 0 days is something that you can keep up. So aim for that
Yeah.
as well.
And perspective is important. There's a great reason for this 50,000 words in a month challenge. It does so many things. It shows you that the seemingly impossible is actually possible. It shows you the importance of getting these ideas on paper quickly, how important that can be. Not you're not going to write a finished book in 30 days. That's not the point, but to get those words out there. And a lot of times we kind of hem and haw and we procrastinate when we could really do so much more than we give ourselves credit for. There's
Mhm.
a serious boost that comes with accomplishment, and this is just a great way to show yourself that you can accomplish something. That being said, we have lots of friends in traditional publishing that maybe publish one book a year, one book every 2 years. The
Mhm.
traditional publishing machine moves very slowly, and I know lots of authors that will take 6 months, 9 months to write a book, and that's just part of their schedule that they work on. Um, you can accomplish so much more than that, but if you have a month where you only get 20,000 words or something, you're still very much on track for the schedule that a lot of authors work on. Every that so many books you see on the shelf were written over a 6-month period or something. Most books that you pick up and read aren't written in 30 days. That's not the point of this. The point is to build good habits and to prove to yourself that you can accomplish more than you think you can. If you don't hit 50,000 words, that's okay. At least you shot for it. At least you showed up and you put your fingers on the keys, and you got more of a story told than you had before. And for a lot of writers, you're right on track with where they are. So 50,000 words, I think, is an awesome goal. I think it's so great to shoot for, but it's not make or break. If you don't make it, it's going to be okay. You still have told more of your story than you had in October, and that's a win.
Yeah, absolutely. And if 50,000 words is your goal, we're doing it with you anyway. We have all these cool live shows, and I can't remember if you highlighted it or not whilst I was giving my little spiel, but Jennifer said, "Come to sprints."
Yes, I did.
We
I
are
popped it
having
up,
them Monday
yeah.
to Friday, right? 12:30
Yep.
p.m. Eastern. We have sprints. We're doing 3 20-minute sprints. We've had a marathon already, a 3-hour marathon. We have some exciting stuff coming up.
Two 3-hour
Yeah.
marathons so
Oh
far.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, see, this is
Yeah.
what happens when I go on vacation, man.
Yeah.
I also want to point out here, Ashley says, "I feel like I've already failed since I have a few 0 days already." Hey, you know what? You're renewing the pledge now,
Yep.
right? Yeah,
And
and
actually,
it's
you've had no 0 weeks so far.
yeah, which is awesome.
Yep. Yep.
One other thing I wanted to point out that some folks might have heard me say before, but Neil Gaiman said he wrote Coraline, or most of Coraline, at 50 words a day. And that's it. And that's now, some people's favorite books and some people's favorite movies.
Yeah.
50 words a day. And then I think he wrote 2,000 words in one day to finish it off. So the pace doesn't matter as long as you can keep it up and as long as you're enjoying yourself.
Yep. It's cool.
Okay. I love all the buzz in the chat, and I see people here supporting one another and encouraging one another. It's awesome.
If you have a question that you really want us to talk about, even if you posted it earlier and we just can't see it, please post it in the chat again. And we would love to answer your questions. But I thought, Doug, since we were today's the 15th, we're right in the middle of NaNoWriMo. The muddy middle gets talked about a lot, and I thought it would be maybe useful for us to talk about it for a minute, and maybe
let me answer
offer
Jane's question real quick.
Yes,
sorry,
I saw that pop up too.
Because I had that flagged as well. So we do have questions flagged too. But yes, please continue. I'm going to drop a link here for Android. Yeah, so that should be in the chat, and then I will also drop one for Apple. You don't get it through like the Play Store or the App Store, because Dabble is, I think it's called what's the word?
PWA, Progressive Web App.
Yeah, Progressive Web App. You actually kind of install it right from the browser. So those articles will help you.
Yeah. The short answer is go to app.dabble.com in your phone browser, and in the menu there'll be a either install or add to home screen. Not sure, the two different platforms handle a little bit differently, but they essentially do the same thing. Then you get a cute icon on your home screen, and you just click it, and it opens, and it just looks like any other app.
Yeah. All right. Sorry, I cut you off, my friend.
Yeah. No. That's great. I'm glad you popped that up. Jane said, thanks, guys. With voice to text, I might be able to use that. I do that all the time, Jane. I don't dictate per se, but if I'm in the car, I'm sitting in line somewhere, and I have a brilliant idea, I'll pop that up, hit the microphone on my phone keyboard, and just rattle off some notes, and then it does a pretty good job, because my phone has recognized my voice and understands my accent and how I pronounce things, and it does a pretty good job. There are a few things that I'll have to clean up later, but usually there's enough context there that I knew what I was saying. So yeah, so I hope that works for you.
Oh, okay.
Ooh,
Oh, I guess we'll answer Valentine's question since
yeah, okay.
since it popped up here.
Yeah,
I was wondering if it's common to get more discouraged and not less as you get closer to the goal. I feel like I wrote 25K in 14 days or whatever, but I'll never get to 50K. So I'll if you're okay with me tackling this first, Hank.
yeah. Go ahead. Go
Um,
ahead.
my what's the best way to phrase this? That is a little bit of being plagued by emotional thinking, I think, which is normal, and we all, think emotionally. But if from an
Yeah,
outside perspective, which Hank and I have, I can counter you, Valentine, by saying, okay, what's different about the next 14 days compared to the 14 days you just did? Right? You've proven that you can already do it. So what's going to stop you from doing it again? A lot of the times we kind of get in our own heads and
hmm
we think that maybe that was a fluke or a one-off, or there was so much momentum and enthusiasm that it's now just petering out, so I can't do it. And there might be some validity in that, and there might be things that pop up in the next 2 weeks as well that do slow you down. However, you have already proven to yourself that you are capable of doing this.
yeah,
So even though it's a really tough pace and it could have been a very difficult 2 weeks, you can either make the decision to say, okay, it's going to be another difficult 2 weeks, but by the end, I'm going to be super happy with it. Or you can make the conscious decision to just pull back a little bit and aim for a bit of a lower goal. But if the 50K is what you really want to hit, you've done it. You've already proven to
yeah,
yourself that you can do it. So let's just keep doing it.
yeah. 100%. And I don't know what your particular situation is, of why you're feeling that way, but this could be um, a pretty common thing that happens in the muddy middle that we talk about. And this might be a perfect opportunity for you to implement one of the strategies that I thought about before show. One of them is to, if you're afraid that the middle of your book, and sounds like you're right in the middle, is you're not passionate about it anymore, you don't like where the story's going, you don't feel inspired by it anymore for whatever the reasons are, find a way to shake it up. Introduce a new conflict or complication. Was the first thing that I had. Midway through, adding an unexpected twist, a new conflict, or a surprising complication can give your story fresh energy. It could be a betrayal. Maybe it's a new obstacle for your protagonist. Maybe it's an unanticipated reveal. Some secret that has been going on in the family, or whatever it is, that raises the stakes and forces your characters to react in a way that maybe you hadn't thought of before. So maybe introduce some new conflicts, something to spice up the story, and make it take a complete hard left turn, and then think about what that's going to do to your story. Now, maybe your plan for the second half of your novel remains exactly the same, but happens differently. Maybe you get to that point differently, or maybe it's a completely new ending to your book, and use the opportunity to sketch out how the book can unfold differently from here on. Just because you laid out a plan in October, like we did, and you have a full outline that you're working from, that's not set in stone. You are still the writer. You are still the creator. You are the god of this universe that you're creating. You can do anything you want. You can scrap the next 15 chapters if you want to and completely rewrite them, or you can change who your protagonist will be in the end, and you get to control all that. So just because you thought it was a good idea before, if you're now feeling like eh, that you want to do something different, you have 100% control. Do something like that. Figure out. I always say that story really comes down to having a protagonist that readers love, giving them something that they want, and then putting everything in their path to keep them from getting that. And that's a story. And find a new thing to throw in their path, because then that will give your character a chance to respond to that, to react to it, and will ultimately be an opportunity for character growth.
Yeah. No. I I don't know if I have a whole lot to add to, to what you can do
Sorry,
to get yourself through the
I
middle.
sermonized a bit on that, so sorry about that.
No, no, it's fine. And one of the things that Josh points out in our 60 Days show is that he actually loves the middle more than either or any other end of the sandwich that is your story. And that's
Yeah,
because there is so much room to figure out character development and show their reactions and introduce
right,
new twists. So I would the muddy middle is it's muddy because it can be a feel like a mire that you're kind of walking through, but it's also muddy because it's not clear sometimes where your character wants to go. So trust your character, figure out what they ultimately want, and let them kind of push their way through this part of the story in a way that's organic. Don't try and be prescriptive about it, perhaps, but figure out, hey, they're in this situation. They've done X, Y, and Z so far. What would they do now? Not what do I want them to do, but what would they do? Because if you've
yeah,
made it 25, 30,000 words into a story, you know your characters pretty well at this point, and they have their own sort of agency at this point as well. So just let them do their thing sometimes.
let them
That
do
might
their
not
thing.
help with everyone. Sometimes you have to be prescriptive. Sometimes, they have to do a job and you just make it feel organic. But trust in them sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, the takeaway here is you are in control of your story, and just
Yeah.
because it feels like it's run out of steam or whatever, do something different. Introduce something that will mix it up. You're in control.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, I have a bunch of questions banked for us already, Hank.
Yeah, yeah,
So I'm just
I'm
gonna I'm gonna loop us back. Guinevere asked a question, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but I want to revisit a little more. How do you
yeah.
guys keep your mental energy and health up during NaNoWriMo? Writing so frequently is super draining for me. And
Yeah,
I've been very vocal about when I co-authored 3 of my books, and how the timeline for those was like 5 months to
yeah,
write these 3 things, which is an absurd. It's a reasonable pace for some full-time authors. It is an absurd pace for me, and I then spent half a year not writing and just not
yeah,
even thinking about writing, and then getting upset when I did think about writing because I wasn't writing, and then I thought I wasn't doing something right. So that this is such a valid question, and this pace maybe isn't for everybody. So you kind of have to, from my perspective, I think you have to make a decision. You decide, hey, I'm going to, even though this is really draining and tough, I'm going to try and just stick with it as long as I can to try and do it every day until the 30th. Like that's only 2 weeks away from now, right?
yep, yep,
Um, or you say something I've already said before, that you just reduce your goal a little bit and you still aim to write every day. So you're still writing frequently, but you're not writing as much as frequently.
right,
So
right,
500 words a day is such a good, that's a very healthy kind of pace to stick to if for writing in general, when writing isn't your
um,
full-time job. If you can get 250 or 500 words every day, Monday to Friday for the next foreseeable future, that's very healthy and you'll finish a book pretty quickly. So if you find that 1600 words is too much, or whatever your daily goal might be, you can cut it back a little bit. But I also see a lot of people in the chat here saying, it's been exhausting, or I felt like I didn't want to do it anymore. And then I showed up to an event like this, or I showed up to a writing sprint. And you use that energy, not just from us, but from all of the people in the chat here boosting you up to help get yourself inspired. You go to the Storycraft Cafe and you see all the people succeeding or asking for help, and you use that to get yourself inspired. And that, like, I'm the kind of person that has been very skeptical about, oh, see this, get inspired, now you're revitalized to go
yeah,
do something. But I've been converted, I I've now been on the other end of that and been inspired by seeing people succeed and asking for help and meeting their goals or failing to meet their goals. Like, it all works together when you have this community. And that's why I also suggest forming some kind of community,
yeah,
whether it's the Storycraft Cafe or just like 2 writing friends, or your mom, you text her, you say, hey, I wrote this many words today. Or if I'm not hitting my goal, I text my dad, hey, dad, I only wrote this many words today. Okay, do you have another half hour to write more words later? That's
Yeah.
inspiring. Just little things like that.
Yeah. Accountability is everything. And I had a memory pop up on Facebook a couple of days ago, and it was from 11 years ago, and it was when I was writing my very first novel. I had written in lots of different forms for a number of years, but I tackled my first novel, my first real novel, 11 years ago, and I was like, oh wow, that's wild. But so over the last 10 years or so, when a project comes up and I've got a deadline, or like when NaNoWriMo comes up, I'm very open with my family. I'm very intentional to tell them, okay, November is going to be crazy for me. So I sit down with my wife and we go over our family calendar, because God love her, my wife is a meticulous planner, and for as a counterpoint to someone like me, that's amazing. But we go over it and we look at things that have to be done this month, and I figure out how I'm going to fit in my writing, my crazy schedule into those things, and then I'm just very open with them about excuse me, some different family things that might come up that I just ask, can we put that off until the 1st of December, if possible. Their birthdays and things like that you can't put off. But you're just you're just honest with people. Look, I've got this going on. This is very important to me. This is something I need to do. Can you help me plan around it? And people will accommodate you more than you think they will, especially if you're just honest with them and you just tell them why this means so much to you, what this is doing for your creative energy. And uh if I'm getting my creative juices flowing and I'm accomplishing something, I'm a much happier person, which makes me a much happier person to be around. uh, you know
That's been the difference.
you're right. Right, but it's just, lay it out there. Let people be on your team. They will be if you ask them to. 95% of the time, just be open with people. Tell them what you've got going on, and they will help you. And like Doug said, find your community, that people
Mhm.
that you can lean on, people that will encourage you, and sometimes give you a little prod when you need it. Sometimes we're not accomplishing something because we just get in our head and we just get in the mully grubs, and we just need somebody to say, okay, that's great, but now what are we going to do about it? And you're like, okay, all right. Sometimes a little tough love, but love being the appropriate word there. It's tough, but we're doing it in love for one another. That is a big help and motivator.
Yeah. And in the workshop that we did at the beginning of the month, when we were talking about support systems, we said there are two different kinds of supporters that you can have. Cheerleaders, who are specifically there to just encourage you, to say, like, if you are excited about a scene that you wrote, you tell them, they go, yeah, that's awesome. Or you say, hey, I met my word goal for the 15th day in a row, or like, that's fantastic, you're doing great. But then there's also an accountability buddy or an accountability support person, who is there to give you what you need to keep going. So I
Right.
mentioned my dad, and that wasn't like a off the cuff kind of joking thing. No, I use him. I'll send him a text because he likes the books that I write. I'll say, hey, this is what's going on, and if I'm not doing what I want to be doing, and he knows like what my goals are, then I can count on him to give some snarky remark to get me going. So and that works for me. For other people, that's not going to work. You might need a gentler approach to it, or you might need a more direct approach to it.
Yeah.
But give yourself both of those options, and they can be the same person. I know some people have said that like their spouse fills both those roles, but if you can get two different people at least to fill those roles, that's even better.
Yeah. 100%.
Ooh, I
I'm
like
I'm gonna
this.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna say Valentine's
Hey,
Day. If I get to my 50K, mom's gonna pay for a year of Dabble. That's fantastic.
heck
That's a
yeah.
great idea.
Yeah. Heck yeah, that's awesome. That's
Uh,
awesome. One of the little thing that I wrote here about the muddy middle, I'm just gonna throw in real quick. One thing that I thought about, and I've used this once before, write a disaster scene. Right when in the middle of what's going on, and you think you know the progression, write something that is a complete disaster. And then let your characters, let them sit with it for a minute and see how they respond. And if you've spent some time with these characters, enough time to get to the middle, um, they'll run amok a little bit and see what they do. And it's fun to just inject chaos into the story every now and then. And you may keep it, you may not, but it may teach you something about your characters that you can use later.
Yeah. All right. For our next question, we have some questions about storycraft specifically, but I want to
Okay.
pivot to something real quick before we get there that Veronica just mentioned, and I have banked here that NJ has asked as well. Veronica asked how to explain to non-writers that my story isn't just a silly dream, but is actually really important to me. And NJ asked a similar thing. How do you
Yeah.
respond to those who don't view writing as a real job? It's really killing my drive sometimes. So, do you have thoughts on this, Hank? Because I have thoughts on this.
You start, and I'll
Okay.
I'm gathering my thoughts, but I do have some thoughts.
Okay. So I have a couple thoughts, I guess. First, it depends on who it is that is being this
Yeah.
negative Nancy to you,
Right.
right? And to put it harshly, if they're like your friends, if you consider them friends and you say to them, writing's really important to me, I want to do this challenge, or that I'm really passionate about this art and I want to pursue it as something that could be part-time or full-time work for me, and they say that's not going to happen, or they don't support you, or they laugh or anything like that, those aren't friends. Like those
Right. Yes.
like that can be kind of blunt, and you could have good times with these people, you could have very cherished memories with these people, but I cannot think of something a friend would say to me where I would laugh at them or dismiss them or talk down at them if they said it
Right.
was important to them or they were passionate about it, right? So
Yeah.
you first have to identify who is it that's saying this thing to you. If it's a stranger, ignore them. If it's on social media and someone's just trying to bring you down, for example, block them. Like
Yeah.
you don't have time for that
Yeah.
kind of negativity.
Remove that influence.
Gone. If it's a
Yeah.
friend, take a critical look at that relationship. It could be a toxic relationship. I can't, play therapist here and assume what's happening in your life, but take a look, because if they're acting like that for something that you say is really important and that you're passionate about, how are they acting in other situations? Now, it could be family that's doing this, and that's a little trickier. You're kind of stuck with family, unless in extreme situations. I know people will go no contact with family over some things, maybe not this, but other things in life. So that's possible, but more or less you are stuck with family even if they support you or not.
Yeah.
If that's the case, then just say, hey, that might be your view on it. I don't agree. Perhaps we just don't talk about this, right? And
Yeah.
then that's establishing a boundary of some sort. So that's a communication boundary. You don't want that negativity. You don't talk to them about it anymore. If it's something more like someone asked a question a week or two ago, saying, hey, I want to do this challenge, but my parents want to limit my screen time. And so they're not allowing me to spend this much time on the computer. They want me to go outside, what have you. Then you just have to, ideally, if I was in that situation, write a letter or write a list of things as to why this is important to you and what it means and what it will look like for you to be successful and what success will mean to you, and then sit down and have a serious conversation with
Yeah.
them.
And show them a sample of your writing.
Yeah.
Show them why it's that this is not just a ploy to get more screen time. Show them
Hmm.
what you're doing and allow them to get on your team.
Yeah. Tell them that you're getting to 30,000 words and you're actually suffering now. It's no longer fun. And so you're not enjoying the screen time. You're just you have to do it though. No,
Right.
that's a joke for,
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
record. But yeah, if anyone else in the chat has anything to add to this, but Jane's saying yes, boundaries. Boundaries are so hard to learn to establish because it
Yeah.
means conflict. And
Yeah.
conflict's easy for us to write for our characters, but conflict in real life we tend to avoid.
Right.
But if you don't establish those boundaries, then you're either going to get treated in a way you don't want, or people just won't realize how important this is to you.
Yeah.
Right. And
I
then, oh, sorry.
No, no, no. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just
I
gonna
didn't mean
say,
to cut you
on again, go back to that support system and start surrounding yourself intentionally with people
off.
who will support you in this.
Right.
Right?
I often think back to the story that you've told, Doug, about your first novel and how you told no one that you were writing it, and then one day you
Hmm.
showed your dad, "Hey, I've got this finished novel," and he was like, "Well, I didn't know you were doing that."
Yeah.
I in the author interviews that I've done over the years, a topic keeps coming up over and over, and it's the gift of anonymity that we talk about a lot, and that's that um, in the beginning stages of your writing career, when no one knows that you're writing, that is a gift. Because no one knows to expect anything from you, and you get no feedback, you get no negative emotion, with it, or expectations. The
Hmm.
the expectations of following up something is can be very crippling, especially if you have success early on and then people start wanting to know where the next one is. So, um, the portion of your writing career when no one when maybe you haven't had success yet, and by success I mean like monetary success or whatever way you measure it. But if you've not seen those things yet, you're not required to tell everyone that you're writing a novel. Sometimes you don't have a choice. Sometimes we're talking about people that don't want you to take an hour a day or something to work on your craft. I understand that that's not who I'm talking to or about right now.
Hmm.
But you don't have to tell everyone that you're writing a novel. Allow yourself to hold this time as precious, that this is just for you, and it you will see it one day as a gift, that you had this time to work on it where it was just you, maybe a couple of voices that are encouraging, maybe allow them to speak into your life and to weigh in on this. But I would hold it precious, and I would put up boundaries around it and just not allow everyone in, and just give yourself the freedom and the time to work on it, and where it's just you, and there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever, for you just to have something that's just for you, and it's something that you find fulfilling, and just let it be that.
Yeah.
And there's going to be plenty of time where you're going to have critiques from everyone, and and people will weigh in on whether your time spent was worth it or not, and there's going to be nothing you can do about the criticism that comes and goes, and at that point, it's that doesn't matter anyway. You've done the work, so find a way to protect this time and hold it sacred.
Yeah. One of the other things I want to focus on for this question is do not view writing as a real job. And it quite honestly might not be a job for somebody. So I'm going to drop a link in the chat right now, or as a comment if you're watching on Facebook, to a live stream, fireside chat that we did, Hank, about the 3 levels of an author journey.
Yeah, yeah, that
And
was great.
some people want to write full time. That is their dream. They're going to make that their career, and that's what they're working towards. Some people will only want to write part time, and it will supplement their income. It will help them go on vacation, help them save up, and they write 1 or 2 books a year or something like that, maybe more. Some people will only want to write as a hobby. They might not ever publish a book. They might just write for fun. They might write fan fiction. They might write short stories that they post on their blog, or they might write a story and they only publish 1 or 2 in their entire life. All of those are totally valid, and all of those are completely up to you as to what you want to pursue. So if some people will think, okay, being an author, that might not pay the bills, and for some people that's just not the case. You don't want to do it full time, right? If you do want to do it full time, if you want to prove these people wrong and say that is a real job, it does take a lot of work. I'm not gonna steer you away from that, but just figure out, like, beyond them being negative, does it even matter if they think that it's not a real job or
Right.
not? Is this a hobby
Yeah.
for you? Is this part-time work for you? Or are you just going to prove them wrong and do it full-time anyway?
Yeah. And the first thing that popped in my mind when you start talking about this, Doug, and you immediately launched into it, was why do these people's opinion matter? They're not friends.
Yeah.
Clean house. Maybe that's a little bit harsh, but yeah, these are not people that you want speaking into your life anyway. But anyway, that's
Valentine just asked, how do I go about writing full-time? because you don't know how to do that. Is there some secret? I'd say start with that live stream, but perhaps in December or January, Hank, we can have a show about that, because
Yeah.
that in itself is like an hour and a half long conversation.
Yeah.
I would also say go to dabblewriter.com/w, and I will drop a link for Make Money Writing and Marketing and Publishing. Those are the two categories of articles that you can check out for more advice on publishing and the career side of it and making money that way.
Yeah.
Beauty, thanks
Also,
for joining us.
yeah. Also, go to the YouTube channel that you're watching this on now. Click on the live tab, and you can watch 200 almost author interviews that we've done over
Mhm.
the last couple of years, and we dig into what each of these people's path has been to a lot of times become a full-time author. You can all the paths are varied and different, but everyone has a story. Go check out what they did, and eat the meat, spit out the bones, and see what works for you. But there's lots of stories there of people just like you that have done the work and become full-time authors.
Yeah. And just since answering that question, we've had a multitude of people give different
Yeah.
answers to what kind of author they want to be. So
Yep.
don't care about whether or not people think you can make this a career. Care
Right.
about what's important to you and then just pursue your goal. And
That's
just
right.
ignore those people as much as you can. Which
Yeah.
sometimes you can't ignore them, but like
Yeah.
you can ignore some of them.
Yeah.
so,
You sure can.
so start there.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, we have some more questions here. Hank, are you okay if we run over the hour mark a
Yeah.
little bit?
Let's not.
Okay.
I just always assume that we will.
Okay, let me see. What do we? Okay, let's go to an actual Storycraft uh, question here from Maven.
Okay.
Do you have any advice on how to handle time skips in your story? Like if there's just some days where nothing particularly happens. This is almost like a pacing question.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on this?
Um. It's, sometimes it's not. Uh. Sometimes it's okay to just say 3 months have passed.
Hmm.
Sometimes you can just say that. Um, Sometimes there are more creative ways. You could talk about the seasons changing, and you could describe what's happening in the world that will clue the reader in to what's going on without having to come out and say it. There are a lot of little contextual things that you could add that give the impression that something's happened. Um, without just coming out and saying it. But sometimes it's okay to just say 3 months later. I mean,
Hmm.
that the world kept turning and everything was okay, but 3 months later this happened. Um,
Yeah.
it kinda depends on your story, but, there are plenty of creative things that you can do. You can talk about how the weather's changed. You can talk about how the semester at school, was eventful in so many ways and, bring out an example and that think creatively about how to talk about the time changing without just saying it. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's the first thing that on top of my head.
I think that's good, and that leans into show don't tell,
Yeah.
where you can tell sometimes. You can, like you said, you
Yeah.
can just say 30 days later, but you can
Right.
also have one chapter being your main character studying for a test, then
Yeah.
saying, this test is in a week. It's cramming really hard for it. The next chapter, the test wasn't as hard as she thought.
Yeah.
That tells us a week has passed, right? Or that shows that a week has passed without explicitly telling it.
Right.
I
Right.
write fantasy, so there's a lot of walking in fantasy. There's a lot of travel time in fantasy. And I
Yeah.
also think about Dungeons and Dragons when your party's going on adventures. There's a lot of travel time. And I think any dungeon master in the chat here or a game master, if you're playing in another system, will know that travel can be very boring. Oh, okay, you traveled 20 miles today and you set up camp. Good night. You travel 20 miles the next day. But there's different ways that you can play with this, or that I play with it in fantasy, where let's say we're going on a week long hike, like our protagonist is going on a week long adventure to get somewhere. You can sprinkle in events to break that up, if they're meaningful to the character and the plot. You can use a subplot that has events during that time. So my protagonist in my story is gone for a couple months from the main city, and in that time other characters have things going on, and sometimes they will reference when the character left, saying, it had been a difficult week since Doug left, right? And that's not me saying Doug left a week ago, but it is me saying it in a way that's a little more
Right.
engaging. Right. So you can
Right.
do things like that. You can also say something like, it was an easy week-long trek, right? It's not the most creative thing, and that can be brushed up in line editing, or revising, but that's perfectly okay if nothing's happened. It's better to give that concise summary than to try to fill it with unnecessary fluff or
Yeah.
events that mean nothing.
Yeah. And you can have fun with it. You could say 2024 was a crazy year and no one expected Godzilla to attack in January of 25, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or
Um.
there's it's all kind of fun. You just give yourself permission to play around with it and figure out what works for your story. There's as many ways to do it as there are stories, but find a fun way to do it for you.
I have to disagree with Ashley in the comments here or the chat. I play a lot of D&D,
Oh.
and we almost enjoy the downtime more than the combat. I'm such a sucker for combat, and like my players just have to deal with that because they get a lot of combat.
They're all bruised
Uh,
and bloodied and battered by the time you're done with them.
okay, so hopefully that helped, matey. It's tough without knowing the specifics of your story,
Yeah.
but just either you can feel free to skip it or fill it with some meaningful subplot or
Yeah.
or events. Just don't fill it with unmeaningful stuff.
Right. Right. And that's
If
why I
you
say
do,
if you figure out that what you're trying to do just makes it convoluted, just say it.
yeah,
A year passed and it was
yeah,
okay. It's better to just say it and get it over with than it is to add stuff that's just going to annoy the reader. If you feel like that it's just adding more than is necessary, just say it and move on. Just,
yeah. And if
yeah.
it's important, you have to say it.
Yes.
Otherwise, your reader will be confused.
Yes.
Unless, so like chapter to chapter, people might assume a day has passed.
Hmm.
But if you're doing, a couple days in between chapters and you've established that and that's consistent, then that's fine. You don't need to keep saying it. But
Right.
if you're doing, chapter 1 is a day, chapter 2 is a day, chapter 3 is a day, and then chapter 4 is a month later, you need to clarify that for a reader because they're not going
Right.
to get that in without some context.
Right.
Okay. How about, well, NJ just asked a question that I'm working on my author website on WordPress. Any advice on what to include or how
Mm.
to use it? NJ, I don't know. So I'm going to use this actually as a shameless plug for
I was about to
Dabble
say, didn't you
Premium.
do a workshop on this not
I
long
did.
ago?
So for premium dabblers, I did a workshop on author websites, what to include, kind of how to build it. And that was a few months ago now. But if you are a premium member, you get access to all of those workshops anyway. On top of, or other than that, I think we might have an article or two about it on Dabble U. Otherwise, like, it is pretty in depth. So
Yeah.
what I would say as like a Sparks Notes kind of summary, keep it simple: homepage, books, about, contact, and then a call to action to sign up for a newsletter or buy your books. That's it. Doesn't need to be flashy. The more you put in, the more lost they get.
Yeah.
That's, yeah. It's tough for me to go deeper than that because, again, I think it was like a 2.5 hour workshop or something. Jane's got to go, but thank you, Jane, for joining
Yeah.
us. We
Thanks,
appreciate you
Jane.
being here. We appreciate everyone being here.
Yeah.
Um,
And we love the questions and the comments, and the way that you support one another is amazing. Thank you so much, everybody.
Ashley here saying adding an email newsletter to it. I believe that was advice you got from a Dabble article. Yeah,
Yes.
that is. We've said time and time again, how email newsletter is your most important marketing piece, and
The most important.
that's like your website is essentially to sell your books or to get more emails on your email list, or
Yeah.
do both.
Or both.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So, and your email list is to sell more books. So
yeah, and there's been lots of advice that has floated around over the last decade of the best way to sell books and all of that. And Facebook ads come in and out of favor. Amazon ads come in and out of favor.
yeah, they're
Google
expensive.
rankings come in and out of favor. The one thing that is always consistent is have a way to directly contact your readers, and that is through a newsletter.
Yeah.
Utmost importance. Everything
What
else
we'll
falls
do
below that.
again, I mean, I should be better at this because it's my job, but another shameless plug for Dabble Premium is I plan to do a workshop about email newsletters early next year. So that's on its way. Ginger, thank you for joining us for this Q&A session. Nice to see you. Okay, so NJ, you can link your a newsletter is based off of like a third party system and will link to your email but won't be sent from your Gmail client.
Yeah.
Erica, you're
Robert
welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Robert posted the Storycraft Cafe podcast. Most of the podcasts that we put out are from events that we've done on the YouTube channel.
Mhm.
But we extract the audio from that and publish it as an audio podcast. And a lot of times, if you're taking a road trip or you're at the gym or something, you don't want to watch a YouTube video, pop it in there. You can subscribe and just burn through those one after the other. And it's a great place to get it all in one succinct location. And sometimes we throw stuff on the podcast channel that's not on the YouTube channel. So make sure you're subscribed there and get your podcast, get your author information that way.
Your podcast fix with Hank.
Yeah, your podcast fix. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, we have this is came from earlier in the show. Do you have any advice on how to handle? Oh wait, no, sorry, wrong one. My apologies. Valentine. If I'm working on a series, is it okay if I switch to a different book in the series and still count those words? Or does it have to be 50K in the same book? This is talking specifically about this month.
50K.
Yeah.
However, wherever, 50K.
So the only caveat being if you've linked it to Nano, if you linked a project to Nano or chosen a project for the 60-day novel challenge, it's only tracking base in that project. But for the sake of author development, self-fulfillment, reaching a goal, like Hank said, 50K.
Yeah.
And if you do want to still reach the goals with the 60-day challenge or with NaNoWriMo, just write it in the same project and move it later.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. A hack would be to add a new chapter, at the end and paste those words into there. As long as you know that this is a tack-on chapter that I'm using to host those words. And then when the challenge is over, you can copy those words out and put them where they properly belong.
And like Valentine just said here too, I think you can add a book because at least for the 60-day challenge, I know we're tracking based on project, not book within the project. So just add a new book.
Yeah.
Okay.
All sorts of little hacks you can use. Make life easier.
Okay. Do we have anything else? I had this is less of a question. I think we kind of touched on this, but Veronica mentions, what if my characters completely take charge over the story? I'm just writing what they want me to write. I'm beginning to trust that they know what they're doing. And, one of the things I said earlier is just let your characters explore it. However, back it up a little bit. I've said before how I got really unhappy with the draft of my second book when a character went in a direction I really hated and ended up ruining the whole story. And I lost tens of thousands of words because I had to go back and fix it. So, yes, trust them, but trust them in that you know what their goals and motivations are and go that way. My issue was I trusted this character and didn't know what his goal or his motivation was. And so it just went off the rails and it didn't make sense. So if you put in the pre-work for your character, then you can trust them. And not even you don't need to know it 100% because sometimes it changes along the way or you get a better sense of it along the way, but you need something to some guideposts to help you stay on track.
Yeah. And what I like to do is to think of my story in terms of a road trip. We've used this analogy before. And like today, I'm going to drive from here to Dallas. and I-20 goes from where I live straight through Dallas. I know that's a straight shot, but there are other ways that I could go. There are detours that I could make. Um, give your give your characters a destination
Hmm.
to kind of lock them in so that they don't go too crazy, but give them the freedom to respond and react to the more granular details, as long as they know they're going where you ultimately want them to go. How they get there, maybe that's a fun thing to let these characters explore, but
Hmm.
you have to maintain some level of control, because you are the writer, but let them, sometimes let them see what they'll do. As
Yeah.
long as you maintain that control ultimately.
Yep.
Yeah. Don't let
In
them go
reference to the last
30,000
question,
words crazy, that
I've learned a lot in
haven't
writing
we all?
books. So,
Haven't we all? Yeah.
in reference to the last question, Kara said, I'm working on multiple projects. I have a document where I paste everything I write during the month. And this year I've called that document Thanksgiving Trash Fire. And Yolanda said, every word I write, I count. I sometimes have snippets of other stories mixed into my nano novel. And I think that, like, just figure out what your goal is. Some people, their goal for this month is to write a whole 50,000 word novel or to write 50,000 words of one novel. But for a lot of people, the goal is just to say, hey, I can write 50,000 words, or start
Yeah.
developing that habit so that you continue to write every day afterwards in December and January and February. So whatever your goal is, focus on that.
Yeah.
You're welcome, Veronica. Um,
Flipping through looking for
Here,
any
this
new
just came
questions,
in.
pop them in.
Okay, so young writer here, trying to improve. I'm struggling with naming the characters. I feel like I keep repeating myself with she, the young girl, and things like that. So synonyms or pronouns.
Yeah.
Any tips to avoid that? I actually, Hank, I want your input on this because I this is something I have to consciously
Yeah.
fix when I do my revisions.
I I have a couple thoughts. One, I've read people say that dialogue tags, she, he said, she said, ultimately those disappear for the reader at some point, and you just kind of don't recognize them anymore. Maybe. But for me, what I like to do is to give my characters distinct voices.
Mhm.
And so that when, like in dialogue, when you're going back and forth between two characters, I like for their voices to be so distinct that you know who's talking without me
Mhm.
saying he said, she said. And then occasionally, if it's a page full of dialogue, I will include, like uh, in my story I'm writing right now, you'll never know how hard it is, Buddy said, and just kind of drop that in, uh, ever I don't know, 6 or 7 lines of dialogue just to kind of reorient the reader. Um,
Mhm.
but I like for their voices to be so distinct that you don't need that. But I still do occasionally just to reorient the reader, just to keep them from getting lost. So that's what I would say is that try to work on your dialogue and your character voices so that those things aren't so needed. And
Yep.
that's not always easy because if you've got two characters, they're from the same part of the world and they're similar age or something, their voices may sound very similar and you'll have to
Mhm.
work some more on that. But find things that do distinguish them, and really work toward those differences.
Yeah. First I want to say, Jennifer, thanks for joining us. Go get that
Yeah.
housework. Um, I had the same train of thought as you, Hank. But I do want to clarify because some people said try a name generator, right? Fantasy name generator. So I
Yep.
don't know if the question here is about coming up with the actual names for characters,
Right.
or you have, Hank, your main character, but you don't want to keep saying Hank did this, Hank did that, he did
Right.
this. The fantastic guy at Dabble did this. You want to
Right.
mix it up a little bit. um, Valentine, thank you for joining us. Um, the I I think voice is very important. And as some folks said here, I think Mina said it first. Uh, I've been told that readers simply block out he said, she said, so it's not bad to use it, and we do, right?
Yeah.
As readers, we do block that out, which is why you use non-said words sparingly in dialogue
Right.
tags and for emphasis for something important.
Right.
But I have in my writing, so in my main series, most of the characters are angels, and so the like synonym that I would use or the word I would use instead of their name would default to like the angel. The angel did this, right? If someone was perceiving it from an outside perspective. But that doesn't work when there are five characters in the scene and they can all be
Right.
called the same thing.
Yeah.
So I got a lot of feedback from an editor just saying, use her name here, use his name here. Like you're overthinking it. You can just use the
Mhm.
name more than you think you can. But that outside feedback is also important to make sure you're not overusing the name. And in addition to the voice, you also want to think about how much you are in your prose just saying something like he said, he saw this,
Right.
he did this. Mix it up a little bit. And this is where practice comes in. If you're a young writer, it's going to take you some time to get better with your prose. If you're an old writer, an experienced writer, it's going to take you some time to get experience with your prose. But think about ways to show it in different circumstances, and think about ways that you can say the environment did something. The trees blew rather than he saw the trees swaying. Stuff like that. See where you can eliminate the addition of a person's name or a pronoun and just focus on the actual object and the action.
Right.
And that's when we get into active and passive voice, which, considering we're already an hour and 15 minutes in, I think we might save for a different show. But I will, while I ramble here to buy myself some time, I'm going to grab an article from Dabble about active and passive voice or active and passive writing. And that will help out because that will eliminate a lot of the he did this, she did that. And there we go. Perfect. Okay. So that is in the chat there. If you are, something I want to point out too for anyone watching this afterwards, when I say that there's something in the chat or one of us says there's a link in the chat, if you're watching this within the first day of it going up, you probably won't be able to see the chat, but if you swing back around, it will all be there. But we'll try and put the links in the description after live shows as well.
Yeah.
Excellent. I'm glad that was helpful. You're very welcome. Thank you for the great question. Thank you, everyone, for the great question, for the awesome conversations today. This was a great show.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think with that said, I think we've reached the end of it.
Yeah, I'm actually prepared today with my calendar to talk about what's coming up next week.
Good. I don't have to blindside you.
Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern time, so 1 hour before normal standard podcast time, we've got Paranormal Romance and Romantasy with Sarah Hawley. That'll be a fun conversation. That's on Monday. On Tuesday, we have our workshop with Sarah Cannon at 2 p.m. Eastern. And Sarah's going to talk about your love of writing and how that affects your author business. That'll be a lot of fun, very inspirational, very motivational, I'm sure. Then Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern time, The Writer's Life with Scott Moon. Scott is an old friend of mine who was a career police officer and part-time writer for more than 20 years. He juggled both and then retired, I don't know, 5 years ago or so to be a full-time writer. And so Scott has lots of insight on juggling two demanding careers, while also looking forward to one day when he could only be a writer, and what he appreciated about both. There's going to be lots of fun stuff there to uncover with Scott. And Scott's a great guy. You'll love it. And then Thursday, we've got our 60-day challenge show with Doug and Josh and me. And we're going to be talking about week 8, basically
The third act.
wrapping up. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that'll be fun. And then next Friday, craft Q&A office hours again. So we've got a
Listening again.
full week, or no, yeah, back
Yeah.
Q&A. So full week next week. So every day something going on. Be sure to stop by, and we're gonna try to help you blow out this challenge and get all of the words written. And
Yeah.
plus, don't forget writing sprints every single day.
Yeah. And on that note, Ashley asked, will the Monday talk be happening at the same time as the writing sprint? Unfortunately, yes. Sarah was only available at 1 that day. And I
Yeah,
think that
I think
even that was a reschedule, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so. I think we've got
So
some
yeah,
overlap there. Yeah.
we
So
got to work with people's schedules when we can.
yeah.
So I mean, if you can do both, do both. If not, I think it just do what makes sense for you. If you need the writing
Right.
sprints more, join us then, and you can
And
watch the interview after.
yeah, regardless of which one you choose to attend live, the other one will be available as a replay. So you don't
Yeah.
have to miss out on both. You just may have to uh, juggle the schedule a little.
Yeah. And I do want to emphasize 2 p.m. Eastern with Sarah Cannon on Tuesday.
Yeah.
So like I mentioned, we do workshops in Dabble Premium. We do them every month, but every now and then we bring in a guest workshop to just add a little bit more value. And so this is one of those guest workshops. We're just making it available for everybody.
Yeah.
So I really encourage you to come in and just get the value out of that, because it's going to be a phenomenal workshop. It'll be right after writing sprints. So
Yeah. And
see you there.
Sarah has a very popular YouTube channel. I believe it's called Heart Breathings, and just
I think you're right.
search Heart Breathings. And she talks about writing all the time, and lots of great content there. So go visit her YouTube channel this weekend, kind of get a feel for who Sarah is and what she brings. And I think you'll get even more excited about the upcoming workshop.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, with that said, thank you for joining us, everybody. It
Thanks,
is
everybody.
Friday afternoon for me, for you, Hank. It is as well. So
Yep.
have a great weekend. Thank you for the great questions and conversation. Hank, thank you for joining me up here. It's always a pleasure.
Always a
And
pleasure. Glad to have you back, Doug.
oh, I'm so happy to. I was saying, 30 seconds before we leave now, I was saying at the beginning of the show to Hank that, man, I kind of wish I took these extra 2 days off. But as soon as we started and we got the conversation going and everyone was having a good time, like there's no place I'd rather be than up here. So
Yeah.
thank you everyone for such a great show. Happy to be back. Have a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday.
See you, everybody.